Capital what? Capital gains. So capital gains, you buy a property, maybe you put a little money into it, you immediately turn around and sell it, and your profit is called capital gains. Now, when you're looking at capital gains, your house, if you sell your house, you make a profit on your residence. That's also capital gains. There's not a whole lot of analysis that goes along with capital gains. Yes, there's definitely things you need to know. You need to do your research. There's a lot you need to find out about. But there's not a lot of number analysis because you're not going to necessarily hold this for the long term. All right? So that's the capital gains. If you're buying stocks, a lot of times you buy a stock low, you sell it high. That's capital gains. All right? So that's not what we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about, and for those of you who have read Rich Dad, Poor Dad know this well, one day I was driving in my car, and Robert called up and he said, Kim, what are you passionate about? And I'm like, Robert, it's 2 o'clock in the afternoon. You're calling and asking what I'm passionate about. He goes, yeah, I got to know. What are you passionate about? And I thought about it for a minute, and I said 2 words. I said, cash flow. He said, yes, I knew it. And I am. I'm very passionate about cash flow because it's freedom. Now, what cash flow is, basically, if you're buying a property, you get your rent. Maybe it's a single family. Maybe it's an apartment building. You collect your rent. You pay all your expenses. You pay your loan or your mortgage. And at the end of the month, you have a cash flow. Might be positive, could be negative. Do we want negative cash flow properties? No, we're looking for positive cash flow properties. We're looking for properties that every month you will be getting a positive cash flow, and again, ultimately leads to your freedom because then you no longer have to work because your money is working for you. So today we're going to be talking about cash flow properties. Any questions on that? Is everybody clear on the difference between capital gains and cash flow? Everybody clear? Anybody not clear? Okay, great. So that's the type of property we're going to talk about. That's what we're going to analyze. And now we're going to start getting into a little bit of the analysis. I'm going to break it down, make it really simple. It's going to be very simplified. Some of this might sound too simple, but for those of you who have bought the product and are watching this on video, there's actually on the program, there is a more detailed analysis that you can study as well. But the key points here that I'm going to point out, I think there'll be some very fine distinctions that you'll be making. And again, you'll start to see how the numbers tell the story. All right? So, good deal, bad deal. There's 3 components to any real estate deal. Doesn't matter if it's Trump Plaza in New York, or if it's a single family house that you're renting out. There's 3 components. The first one is what? First component, when analyzing a deal, you've got to find out what's your income. So the first component is income, the rent that you're receiving. Okay, the main component of income is what? The main component of income is what? Your rent. Who pays your rent? Your tenants. So the key to finding good income properties, and the key to the income section, you say, the question is, how do I increase the income, right? How do I increase the income of this property? So if the key component is rent, if your tenants pay your rent, the key to the income section is knowing how to find and keep great tenants. Correct? That's really all it comes down to. Yes, there's other factors, but if you can find and keep great tenants, that will make your life so much easier because also not only do they pay the rent on time, but they also will recommend your property to other people as well, especially if it's in multiple unit. So the key to income is how to find and keep great tenants. And if I can just do a quick commercial plug, this is a very good friend of mine, Ken McElroy. He is also my investment partner along with Robert. And he put this property together, how to increase the income on your property. And I'll tell you, he and I sat in this studio and we talked about the little things that you can do to increase the income, to reduce expenses, to make your property operate more optimally. So how to increase your income is great. It's all about property management. And for those of you who are doing property, you know that management is really a key. And finding good property managers is sometimes tough to do. So one of the keys is great property management. So I recommend this product. Okay, so you've got your income. You've got your tenants paying your income. What's the next component of any real estate deal? Hello? You got it. Expenses. And I used to think the question to ask is, how can I reduce expenses? Well, anybody with half a brain can cut expenses. But a lot of times what happens is they cut expenses on a property and they also cut the value of their property. You know, maybe we just won't pave the driveway. Maybe we won't paint. Maybe we'll cut down on the landscape, and all of a sudden the property doesn't look so good and people don't want to come to the property. They don't want to live at the property. So it's not how do I cut expenses. The question is, how do I spend money most effectively to increase the value of my property? Got it? I'll give you an example. We have a property and we wanted to put a lot of trees in. It was a little bit stark, and in Phoenix it can look very dry if there's not a lot of green and foliage. So we wanted to put a lot of trees in, and our property manager says, no, that'll increase your water bill. Your water bill's going to go through the roof. I'm like, let's give it a shot. So we planted all these trees. Yes, the water bill went through the roof, but the property looked so green and so lush and cool in Phoenix, which is a great thing, that all of a sudden people just driving by used to stop and ask if there was a unit available. We now have waiting lists on that property, just from planting trees. So again, it's how do you spend the money most effectively to increase the value of your property? And of course, then you can increase your rent, which increases your what? Income, and which increases the whole value of your property, and which of course then increases your cash flow. Okay? So you've got income, you've got expenses. The third component is your debt or your financing. And the very simple question is, how can I arrange for the best financing terms for my property? Now, lately with the interest rates so low, we had a lot of people who were refinancing their homes, or a lot of people moving out of apartments to buy their homes because the interest was so cheap. Made a big change, and now those interest rates are starting to rise again, so we're going to see a shift. But the whole key is, how do I get the best financing? There's all sorts of ways to finance a property, and a lot of people who say, I don't have good credit, or I don't think I can qualify for a loan, again, not a good excuse. It won't cut with me. It won't cut with me. When I first started investing, it wasn't until about 6 years that I actually went to a traditional bank for a loan. I did seller financing. I did all kinds of creative financing. They had what was called assumable loans, which we still have today. Just have to ask if it's available, where you just assume the loan on the property. There's all sorts of ways to finance a property. And here's one little key. Often somebody will find a property and they'll go to a bank and they'll say, here's my numbers, I'd like a loan. The bank says, nope, can't have a loan. So they walk away and they go, darn, I can't get financing for this. I just can't get financing. And they give up. Well, they didn't know that that specific bank doesn't lend on duplexes. They lend on commercial properties. So you've got to find the institution, the bank, the lender that's going to lend on the type of property that you have, and that's where mortgage brokers can come in very, very handy. Are there any mortgage brokers in the audience? Yes, great. You might want to talk to these people, because their job is to set you up with the right lender for your property. And I don't know how to do that, but they do. So that can save you a lot of time and a lot of frustration and a lot of discouragement, because every property has a loan available to it. You just got to find it. So again, finding the best financing terms. So any real estate deal, income, expenses, and debt. That's really the three things you've got to be concerned with. It's not any more complicated than that. Okay, so again, to increase your learning, to increase your retention, please turn to your partner and discuss what you've heard about income, expenses, and debt. Ready? Go. finishing up. And stop and thank your partner. And if you're at home, thank yourself. Okay, so in just a minute, we're actually going to get into the analysis of how you look at the numbers and what the numbers are telling you. And one of the first questions that comes up often is, how do I get the numbers on a property? Where do I find the numbers to look at? Do I have to put them together myself? Are they available somewhere? If you're using a real estate broker, often they should provide you with the numbers. If it's a very small property like a single-family house or a duplex, sometimes you might have to work a little harder to get the actual numbers. Usually the seller, the owner, will provide those for you. If it's a larger property, if it's a threeplex, fourplex, the broker's job is to provide you with the information, provide you with the numbers so that you can determine if it's a property you want to pursue or not. So there is a sheet called a pro forma. And here's the trick on pro formas. Are there any real estate brokers in this audience? Okay, don't take this personally. Real estate brokers occasionally do tend to lie about numbers. Okay? Just want to be upfront with you about that. On a pro forma, they give you the income, expenses, debt on a property. Are they the actual numbers of a property? Not necessarily. Often they are projected, like this is your best case scenario. So it's always important that you get the actual numbers. And once you have tied up the property, once you have an agreement to purchase the property, you have a time period to do what's called due diligence, which is to do your research, to check out the property, to check out the numbers. And it's during that period where you get the actual numbers from the seller, either from the seller themselves or from the broker. But again, be careful on the pro formas. That's just a guideline to see if you're interested, and then you take the next step to go forward. Does that make sense? Okay. So again, if you're watching this on video, there is in the program a more detailed analysis that we'll walk you through, and I can make that available here for anybody as well. All right? Great. Okay, are we ready to do a little analysis? We're going to look just at the numbers. Are there other factors to buying a piece of property, to finding a good deal? Of course. Location. Okay. Was just with Donald Trump. Robert and Donald are writing a book together. Donald made a very good point. He said, location, location, location. However, he's seen a lot of people who have taken a great location and totally destroyed it by putting the wrong property on it, by not doing their research, and people that can take a bad location and turn it into something fantastic. We're talking with Magic Johnson. What he does is he goes into the inner cities where nobody wants to go. No one fears to tread. And he goes in there and he builds these magnificent communities, complete with Starbucks and all, for people of the inner cities. So location is very important, and just know that it's not just location, but that's a key point. Is the trend important of an area? Is the trend going up? Is it coming down? Are people moving in? Is it being revitalized, or is it deteriorating? I don't ever want to buy a property, even if it cash flows, I don't want to buy a property if it's in a declining area. Okay? Other factors such as, the overall look of the property, the age of the property, all of this takes into account. But today we're going to focus on the numbers. So, what I want you to do is with your partner. This is now your investment partner. Say hello to your investment partner. Hopefully they know something. Okay, and for those of you watching this on video, if you're with somebody, they're your investment they're your investment partner. Otherwise, just imagine. Okay. All right. Now, to make it a little more interesting, because if you are going to invest in property and you're going to get in the game of any investment, you got to put a little money down. Okay, so I want everybody to break out a $1 bill, and this is what you are going to be betting with. And if you're saying, I don't want to put up $1, I don't want to risk $1, this is not the game for you. You've got to get in the game. If you're watching this on video, break out your dollar bill. It does you no good to get to talk about it if you're not actually getting some money on the table. Okay, let me see your dollar bills. All right. Which team is the smartest real estate investors here? Hey! Okay, let's make it a little more interesting. The team next to you, this is who you're betting against. So say hello to your team. Okay, grab your partner's hand, hold it in the air. Who's the winning team? All right. Okay, great. What we're going to do is I'm going to show you two properties. One's a 10-unit apartment building, one's a 12-unit apartment building. We're going to break it down into income, expenses, and financing. Okay, and based on the numbers I show you, you are going to determine which property it is you would want to pursue further. All right? So we're going to find out who the smart investors are. Okay, so what's the first component of any real estate deal? Income. All right, put up the first analysis for income. Okay, property number one, property number two. Take a couple minutes with your partner, determine just based on those numbers alone which property you would want to pursue. Ready, go. Begin finishing up, and stop. Okay, let me see those dollar bills again. Who's the winning team? Okay, which team thought property number one was the property they want to pursue? Show of hands. Okay, good. And which teams chose property number two? All right. Pretty even split. Okay, in the income, what obviously stands out? Vacancy. Vacancy. How many teams did not choose property number two because of the high vacancy? Okay. How might a high vacancy work in your favor? Quick turnaround. Okay. Here's a key. Very, very correct. Here's a key. One of the things we like to do when it comes to property is find a property with a problem and fix the problem. If you can find a property with a problem and you can fix a problem, what does that do to the value of your property? Raises it. What does it do to your income? Raises it. What does it do to your cash flow? Raises it. So if you look at this 30% vacancy, if you can fix that problem, if you can lower that vacancy rate, the value of your property goes up, the income goes up, and the cash flow goes up. Now, can you fix every problem? No. You've got to know what problems you can fix and what problems you cannot fix. But if you can, that's what we always look for. Often it's properties that are mismanaged, and you bring in a good management team to turn it around, again, increases everything on that property. Okay. A low vacancy rate of 2%, what could that indicate? You could increase your rent. Your rents might be too low. So maybe there's an opportunity there to raise your rents to be more competitive, which of course increases your income, increases your cash flow. So again, these are the questions that come up as you're looking at these numbers, and then your job is to find out what the fact is behind the question. Okay, another reason I like to focus on vacancy, because your greatest expense in investment real estate is a thing called turnover. Think about it. If somebody moves out of your building, what have you got to do? Carpet cleaning, clean the apartment, paint, market it, advertise it. All of these add to the expense of your property. So it goes back again to the key under income is to find and keep great tenants, because they're going to stay, they're going to recommend the property to other people. Which brings to another point, there's a little item there called late fees. What do late fees indicate? Not great tenants. They're paying late. So not only do you have a 30% vacancy on property number 2, but you've got tenants that are not great. So obviously this property may not be managed quite so well. That could be a negative, that could be a plus. Okay. I think that's about it for income. Okay? So again, what it does is you look at these numbers, and I've only highlighted a few because there are just some key points that I really want to point out when it comes to the income section. But it starts to raise questions in your mind to figure out how this property really